Hello, I'm John Rossi, a touring drummer with a love of all things animal. When I'm on the road, I visit as many zoos, aquariums... Hey, wait a minute. What's going on? Hey, what's going on there? Hello? 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 We interrupt your regularly scheduled program to bring you Rossifari Zoo news. News you can use from the world of zoos and conservation. Every week, we bring you breaking news and analysis from around the globe, featuring the animals you love and the people who care for them. And here's your anchorman, John Rossi. Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome back to Rossifari Zoo News, your look at everything going on in the world of zoos, aquariums, conservation, and general animal weirdness. And of course, my own life. And so, we're gonna be doing something a little different this week again, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But I did want to start off with a little bit of a catch up on me. So I have finished my contract at Northern Stage. Waitress is now a show that I have played rather than a show that I am playing. And I am very, very briefly back at home in Buffalo after spending a couple of days with Miles. And I'm going to be here for, 3 days? 2 of which I'll be volunteering at Aquarium of Niagara, which I'm really excited to be back there. And I can't wait to catch up with the team there, both, human and, frankly, more importantly, animal. And should be a great time. And then after that, y'all, I am heading off on a podcast trip. And I haven't really talked about this much yet. I don't think at all. But, let's just say that y'all are in for a treat. We're going to be hearing from a bunch of new to the podcast facilities on this trip. And I'm actually going to be visiting a whole bunch of places, many of which are new for me and some of which are places that I've visited in the past but haven't been to in years. So I am really looking forward to bringing all of these new places to the podcast and to the Instagram and frankly just to my list of zoos and aquariums that I've visited. Now I'm being coy and I'm not saying where I'm going yet. And no, those of you who message me and think, oh, John will tell me, you don't get to do that. It's all being very hush hush, and I'm going to show off the places as I get there. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun, and there's going to be a lot of cool content coming your way. So I am excited about that. I also wanted to tell you that, yes, I do still think about Felix, my beaver friend, every single day. I love him and hope he is well. And then I actually also wanted to share a really kind of amusing story with y'all. And it comes not from me, but from my mother, actually, though I will share it with you. So it turns out that my mother is not a big fan of podcasts, although she does, listen to and enjoys Rossifari. And so she has a podcast app that she has used for listening to Rossifari. And recently she's had a hard time falling asleep. And because of that, she did some research on the online and discovered that there is a podcast that is particularly helpful in helping people do just that, fall asleep. She basically described it as a person who just talks and says things and is particularly boring. And so it works to fall asleep. And so my mother the other night was passed out when all of a sudden her son started talking to her. She was very asleep and she started to come to consciousness, and she was like, what, Jonathan, why are you here? And why are you talking? What is going on? And I wouldn't shut up. And she started to focus in on what I was saying. And I was talking about animals, and it was really bothering her because she could tell something was wrong. For starters, I was at her house. I don't live with my mother. I was not visiting my mother. I should not have been at her house, but there I was, and I was talking to her, and she kept saying, "Honey, wait, stop. Don't just what's going on? Are you okay? And meanwhile, I'm blathering on about armadillos or something. And all of this was because she apparently fell asleep listening to her sleep podcast. And when it hit the end of that episode, it then launched into the next episode in her feed, which was, of course, an episode of Rossifari. So my poor mother woke up to me rambling on about animals and genuinely thought I was having an emergency and at her house and something was wrong. But instead of telling her what was wrong, I was talking about, baby 9-banded armadillos at Roger Williams Park Zoo or whatever. And I love that story. It's very entertaining and it's really just like what a sign of the times, right? So I thought y'all would get a kick out of that. And then, other than that, not much to say on my end. This is Rossifari Zoo News. Y'all know how it works by now. Crowdsourced, blah-de-blue. Thank you for participating. But we are going to do something a little different this week. Last week, we did a deep dive episode, and it was very popular. And it's been a while since I've done something like this. I've done it in the past, but this one is going to be a less deep dives, but still deep dives episode. So I promise I will get back to normal zoo news in the near future. But until then, there are a few stories that I just really wanted to dive deep into. Not as deep as I did with the direwolves last week, but deeper than the usual, story per minute pace I tend to hit in these zoo news episodes. So I'm going to do that this week. And then I'll probably get back to doing more traditional zoo newsy stuff next week. But maybe, we'll see. But to cover some quick bases for those of you that like the normal episodes, just so you know, many animals were born at zoos in the last 2 weeks, and that is awesome. Some are doing well, and some had to be pulled to be hand-reared, and I'm incredibly thankful to the amazing staff members at those facilities for doing that work. Many animals also died in the last 2 weeks, and they were all awesome and amazing and a tribute to the incredible care their facilities provided for them and are deeply, deeply missed. Or maybe they died too young and I'm sending my love and condolences to the team. Whatever. Also, new exhibits have probably opened or been announced, and some zoos and aquariums got grants and did cool conservation work and stuff. Yay! Okay, so now with those stories out of the way, we can move on to our, what should we call these? Mini deep dives? Shallow dives? They're more like deep snorkels. Yeah, we're going with deep snorkels. Anyway, we're going to get to those now, except one quick reminder. If you don't know it, the Mothering Wildlife podcast is back, and that is a podcast for mothers that are in the zoo field or wildlife field in general, and I do produce it, but obviously don't host it because I am not a mother. But if that is something you'd be interested in, make sure you check out Mothering Wildlife because I'm really proud of the work my friend Elizabeth is doing on that podcast. All right, so let's get to our deep snorkels. All right, so I do want to start off by saying thank you to everyone who reached out to me in regard to last week's special episode about the direwolves. I heard from a lot of you, and all of the commentary was 100% positive, which I super appreciate. I do love doing those deep dive special editions, even though they are very time-consuming, and I promise I'll keep in mind how much y'all love them and try to do those from time to time. I also hope there isn't so much sketchy stuff going on that I have to keep doing the ones that are focused on, negative stuff, what the deep dives often are. And I mention that because this first story this week is, we'll call it a sequel to last week's episode. And the crazy thing is, this is something that I haven't really been seeing hit the mainstream media much, or even hit a lot of the various zoo and conservation organization pages that I follow. But y'all, it's a doozy. So last week, I mentioned that my biggest concern about the direwolf situation was that people would look at it as an excuse to not worry about traditional conservation methods, because why save animals from extinction when we can just de-extinct them? This concern was bolstered when, on April 7th, Secretary of the Interior Doug Burgum posted about how innovations like supposed de-extinction are the new way to approach conservation and that we need to move away from regulation. It scared me to see that idea in writing, and it turns out that just 2 days later, my biggest fears about that became reality. You see, on April 9th, President Donald Trump signed a new executive order called the Zero-Based Regulatory Budgeting to unleash American energy. In the first section, he writes, quote, "In our country, laws are supposed to provide the certainty and order necessary to foster liberty and innovation." Which, wait, what? That's not... Ugh. We are already off to a head-scratching start, but this gets so much worse. The order goes on to say, using a lot of word salad, that moving forward, certain agencies are required to incorporate a sunset provision into their regulations regarding governing energy production to the extent permitted by law. The order goes on to state that these conditional sunset dates are defined as the date a regulation will cease to be effective and will be removed from the Code of Federal Regulations. Now, this is a sweeping executive order that covers a very large number of agencies and a bunch of laws that are on the table, but a few of these pertain very closely to what we care about on this podcast. In particular, one of the agencies affected is the Fish and Wildlife Service. And the regulations that are specifically mentioned as being important to sunset from that agency include the Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act, the Migratory Bird Treaty Act of 1918, the Fish and Wildlife Coordination Act of 1934, the Andromous Fish Conservation Act of 1965, the Marine Mammal Protection Act of 1972, the Endangered Species Act of 1973, the Magnuson-Stevens Fishery Conservation and Management Act of 1976, and the Coastal Barrier Resources Act of 1982. All of these laws are the bedrock of animal conservation in the United States. As a matter of fact, there are many conservationists who will tell you that the Endangered Species Act in particular is the single most successful piece of conservation legislation that has ever been created and enacted anywhere. Modern conservationists use this law as the basis for almost all of the work being done to save species. And on top of that, the Marine Mammal Protection Act is just life-changing for those animals. And they ensure that our marine mammal populations have a chance to survive. Y'all, this is devastating. I literally, when I first read about this, I just sat and mumbled, "Oh my God, he did it. He actually did it." And then I went and read the entire executive order, and it's not good. And along with the sunsetting of those laws, the focus of this executive order is on unleashing American energy. And because of that, when these laws are sunsetted, the damage that is going to be done is going to be astonishing. With some policies that are being passed right now, we can say that it's going to be terrible in the short term, but that as soon as we move on to a new leader, that person will be able to reverse a lot of the executive orders literally on their first day in office. And that is technically true of this one as well. But the quest for unleashing American energy means drilling, deforestation, habitat destruction in general, extra pollutants entering our water, our land, our air. And just in general, it means that a whole lot of stuff that is going to happen is going to be irreversible, or at the very least, will take a lot more time to reverse than just the quick signing of an executive order. There is some good news here, and that is that the sundowning of these laws isn't 100% automatic. Basically, for each law listed, the agency in charge of it needs to issue a sunset date by September 30th of 2026. That is no more than 5 years after that date. At least that is if I'm reading this executive order correctly, because honestly, it is a bunch of word salad mixed with legal mumbo jumbo, but I'm pretty sure I've got that right. The sundowning can be delayed if there's a request for additional information or other reasons the agency isn't able to fully sundown the law in that time. And honestly, now I'm reaching the point where I'm as sick of saying sundown as I was of saying dire wolves last week. But yeah, so I guess that's the good news. These dates don't have to be established until over a year from now, and the actual dates have to be within the next 5 years, meaning that it is possible that each of the individual agencies, including Fish and Wildlife, can agree to a sundown date that would be after the current Trump administration. You know, assuming that those norms are still followed and we have like elections and stuff. And so if that's the case, these laws could be sunset before they are sunset. They could be unsunset or sunrisen, or anyway, the sunsetting can be canceled if they stretch it out that far. But yeah, sunrisen? I don't know. I guess it is almost Easter, so maybe sunrisen. But of course, for that to happen, it would require Trump appointees to see the value of these laws and to delay the sundowning until after his administration might potentially be over, which, I don't know, seems like a long shot to me. After all, delayed gratification doesn't really seem to be Trump's thing, and stalling and not giving him what he wants doesn't seem to be his underlings' thing. But hey, at least for now, there is that little potential positive situation. And again, the crazy thing about this executive order is, okay, all of it, let's be honest. But one of the crazy things is that it is just getting buried under the mountain of crazy stuff that is happening right now. I've barely seen any mention of it on my social pages, and I specifically follow a whole lot of conservationists. But between the other scientific funding cuts, plus worrying about the deportation of citizens and mass incarcerations in terrible prisons in other countries, and the economy crashing and stocks diving and prices going up and all that stuff, who has time to worry about the potential sundowning of the entire suite of laws designed to save animals and their habitats? Well, I do, and you do, but in general, it's just gonna slip by most people's attention. Gotta say it, these are dark times, and I am sorry to keep having to talk about it at length in my Zoo News, but I have to because this stuff really does matter, especially when it's this important, and frankly, not getting nearly enough attention. The good news is that you can reach out to your congresspeople and make a stink, and maybe it'll help. Who knows? Moving on to our second story for the week. The staff at the San Diego Zoo is currently engaged in contract negotiations with management, and it is not going particularly well. In fact, it is going so poorly, the staff is considering a strike. And unlike many of the various zoo staffs that try to fight for higher wages and other quality of life improvements, this battle is actually starting to get some national attention. The staff at the zoo are members of Teamsters Local 481, and the union leadership and management recently came together to jointly propose a new contract. The members of the union overwhelmingly voted against the contract, with 860 members voting no and only 272 voting yes. The contract in question offered wage increases starting this year with 2% raises this year and in 2026, 2.5% in 2027, and 3% in 2028. Economists currently expect the cost of living in the United States to raise by 2.5% this year, and for that number to increase over the next few years. So these proposed raises are actually below what is expected to be the increase in the cost of living in the United States over these years. And actually, those numbers come from before the whole recent tariff debacle that is having quite the impact on the cost of living in the U.S. beyond what those economists predicted. And it's also worth mentioning that the San Diego area is not only one of the most expensive areas to live in within the United States, but it's also an area that has a cost of living that tends to grow more quickly than the national average. Over the last few years, the cost of living increase has been around 3.5% annually, almost double what it's been in the rest of the United States. So the proposed contract would actually see staff base pay rates grow further away from a livable wage year to year, which is obviously not ideal. Other aspects of the proposed contract were also derided by staff. Healthcare costs were maintained at a 2025 level, which is not bad, but there was no adjustment in future years to guard against increasing insurance costs. And the pension plan not only didn't offer any increases, but has already not had any increases since 2021. So that is already stagnant, and they are offering no additional potential for growth. With workers rejecting the proposed deal, the contract that should have already expired remains in place for the time being. The zoo has expressed a willingness to make any agreed-upon raise in a new contract retroactive to the start of the year, but staff members have also been told that if they do strike, that offer will be off the table, which could cost staff months of back pay. And a strike is a possibility. It would be the first one in over 40 years at the San Diego Zoo. But the union already had its strike authorization vote, with 90% of the union authorizing moving forward with the tactic. Now, that is not to say that there will be a strike, but that the union is authorized to call for one, which normally helps at the negotiating table. From my time studying the labor movement, I can tell you that a 90% authorization vote is really high and shows that these union members are clearly united in fighting for higher wages. And that unity comes in part because, by all accounts, the negotiations are not going well, and many of the staff feel that they are not being negotiated with in good faith. I did speak to multiple individuals for this story, and they are all really dissatisfied with their situation. In fact, the relationship between workers and management has gotten so tense, the zoo canceled their annual Onward staff event at the last minute. Literally at 11:30 in the morning, the day that it was supposed to happen, it was canceled, which is not a great look. The event is an annual party that features presentations on the future of the organization and other fun and celebratory events, and is attended by over 1,000 staff of the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance. The event costs an estimated $50,000, according to multiple sources, a cost the Alliance was apparently willing to eat because, again, according to multiple sources, they were worried that staff would strike or make a scene or something at the event. An interesting note to this story is that Paul Barabalt, the CEO of the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance, recently stepped down, and the senior vice president of the organization, who is also the executive director of the San Diego Zoo Safari Park, Lisa Peterson, is also leaving at the end of the month to take a new role as the president and CEO of the Houston Zoo. COO Sean Dixon is serving as interim CEO, but that means that this labor unrest is happening at the same time as a huge turnover in management, meaning that a new person, Sean Dixon here, has to try to handle this situation and also assist the board in finding a new CEO. And that is tricky, though this change may actually help the situation, as Barabalt was making just around, maybe under, maybe over, depending on what source you look at, $2 million annually, a salary that is considered very high in the nonprofit world, even for an organization as large as the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance. In fact, that salary grew significantly from year to year, even as the staff at the zoo saw modest at best and sometimes no annual increases to their pay, which is something that has led to a lot of the unrest amongst the staff. As far as I can tell, the fact that Paul has stepped down is actually probably going to help these negotiations pretty significantly. There were a whole lot of people there who apparently were not huge fans. So hopefully that will help. But, if you're like me, you're kind of wondering, what would a strike at the San Diego Zoo look like? And honestly, the people I spoke to aren't entirely sure themselves. In the past, when I've covered strikes at zoos, I've seen all kinds of different stuff. Often the animal care staff continues to care for the animals with the full consent and backing of the union. They aren't scabbing, I want to be super clear about that, but they refuse to participate in any other aspect of their jobs. Meanwhile, other personnel do the more traditional striking thing of not doing the work, so no one is there to serve food or clean up or handle admission or anything like that. So the zoo is generally forced to close, but the animals are still cared for. Other times, strikes have included animal staff. Heck, there was a management lockout at Zoo de Granby, and for over 6 months, their union keeper staff was locked out, with management and other workers at the zoo tasked with animal care and other tasks like that, stuff that they were not properly trained for. And that was a full-on 6-month-long labor dispute. So, sometimes both sides will just dig their heels in, and that can be tricky. There's no real resolution to this at this point. The zoo staff and management are legally required to go back to the negotiating table, and I believe they are already there. And I'll be curious to see what comes from all of this. But y'all know I love the San Diego Zoo. I've had multiple people from the management team on my podcast, and I have personal relationships with a lot of people out there. With the union and management back at the bargaining table, I truly hope an agreement is able to be reached that actually provides a living wage to the keepers and the rest of the staff there. The San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance is already the proud leader in so many aspects of this industry that I would just love them to pioneer the notion of paying their staff what they deserve. Be pretty cool, and I'm really hopeful that will be the resolution of this story. And then our final deep snorkel for this week. A new trend hit the interwebs this week, and it caused a lot of pushback for zoos and aquariums that chose to participate. The trend is called #AI Action Figure, and the idea behind it is just that. You are supposed to use AI to create an action figure version of yourself, including fun accessories. Many zoo and aquarium PR teams jumped at the opportunity to grow their following, creating either action figures of their various staff positions, such as zookeepers or aquarists, or creating AI action figures of their most beloved animals. Reactions to the different ones that I saw were mixed at best and terrible at worst, and frankly, rightly so. We've talked about this on here before, but to quickly rehash, there are some serious problems with AI, and in particular, generative AI. Generative AI is trained by literally stealing and copying elements of original artwork without compensating the creator. It's not great, and as someone who, creates art for a living, I'm weirdly opposed to that. However, that's not the issue that brought participating zoos and aquariums such condemnation. Nope, that came from the fact that generative AI is absolutely terrible for the environment. Cooling these systems uses an incredible amount of water, just wasting that precious natural resource. And also, the carbon footprint of training generative AI models is It's insane, y'all. I've seen it estimated that training one single AI model has the same carbon footprint as 300 cross-country flights. And to be clear, when I say cross-country, I mean crossing the United States, not some tiny little country like Eritrea or something. That would be better. But no, the States. So any organization that preaches conservation messaging and encourages people to make changes to their own lives to help save the environment absolutely needs to stay away from using generative AI artwork in any capacity. And I have to say, the facilities that did partake, a lot of them got slammed in their comments. I noticed that the Toronto Zoo and the San Antonio Zoo in particular got hit super hard. So much so, in fact, that the Toronto Zoo actually deleted their post. The comments section there got particularly grouchy, as the AI action figure that they posted also featured the zoo's hashtag Guardians of the Wild. And while the Toronto Zoo certainly does deserve that title, and they do amazing work, and I am not putting down this one facility, let's be honest, the decision to use generative AI was not an example of being a guardian of the wild, right? But, we all make our mistakes. It's fine. The San Antonio Zoo has left their post up, and it's garnered almost 300 comments, the vast majority of which were negative and trying to educate the zoo about the problems with AI. And those comments also got pretty nasty because this is not the first time that facility has chosen to post AI-created images. And they've come under fire for it when they have in the past. So interesting that they chose to again. And it's one of those things where, like, I get it. We all want to be viral. We all want to grow our following and spread our message. And zoos and aquariums have people or sometimes entire teams dedicated to doing just that, right? They're getting paid a hopefully living wage to do social media things. And that opens you to some criticism. And, a lot of people don't even fully understand how bad AI is for the environment. So, like, truly, no shame. I get that these things happen. And you just have to kind of own it and learn from it and move on. And I'll be curious to see, like, Toronto took down the post. Cool. But are they going to acknowledge it at all? Will there be a discussion? Or do they think, let's just pretend this never happened? San Antonio left theirs up. But, the damage was already done. The artwork is rather cute. I don't know. I kind of see all sides of this. And I think that in a very fast-moving world, it's easy to occasionally do the wrong thing. And I think if you own it, it's cool. Move on. Now, I will say that there's another side to this story, and it's pretty awesome. Some facilities decided to participate in the trend, but without using AI. My favorite example of this was Roger Williams Park Zoo, which posted a zookeeper action figure. It was a female keeper with a macaw on her shoulder and a rake in hand, with accessories including a radio and other fun keeper accessories. Instead of using AI, our friend Corey Michaela at the zoo actually drew the action figure and all of that stuff, and it looks incredible. As a matter of fact, I loved it so much, I asked her to do one for Rossifari, and she did, and it is awesome. I have posted it on my page, and if you haven't seen it, you are missing out. My accessories include a podcast mic and headphones, a drum and some drumsticks, and of course, both a tree kangaroo and a red panda. Corey knows me so well. She even captured my traditional summer costume of a black V-neck t-shirt and tan cargo shorts. Yeah, I know. All of you who are thinking it, I know. It's what I wear. Shut up. The best thing about this is Roger Williams Park Zoo used the post to show that you can participate without using AI, something they were praised for all over the internet. I actually saw more shares of that post than any of the other ones that zoos and aquariums did, which is awesome. They also got so many positive comments. I need to say that too. And, that's all the stuff, the shares and the positive comments and new followers and stuff is just what you hope you get when you participate in a viral trend. And they did it without, a negative environmental impact. I love it so much. And they weren't the only ones. Adventure Aquarium also took a different tactic. They actually used photos and kind of shrunk them down and placed them on an action figure card background. So overall, these efforts were super successful in both participating in a viral moment and, not destroying the planet in the process, which I super love and is such a great reminder that, you can find ways to stick to your mission and still have fun on the internet. So yay that. And that brings us to
Animal holidays. Animal holidays.
All right, it is April, which is Ape Awareness Month and National Frog Month. And then for your individual days, the 19th starts National Parks Week, I guess, maybe? Is that still a thing? Do we still have those? It's hard to say. The 20th is Cuckoo Day. The 22nd is Earth Day, I guess, maybe. Do we still have an Earth? No, I'm kidding. And then the 23rd is International Palace's Cat Day. And those are your animal holidays for the week. All right, so there you have it. A couple of deep snorkels. I hope y'all enjoyed that one. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what you think about you already let me know that you love the special edition super deep dives. But let me know what you think about the deep snorkels. I like mixing it up sometimes. I promise we'll eventually get back to the normal format. I know y'all love it. Or maybe y'all secretly hate it and like this more. So, let me know. I do want to take a moment to say thank you to my Red Panda level patrons, including Dr. Laura Schenk, Dr. Stephen Williamson, Barbara Bennett, Jenny Owens, Melissa Reed, Carrie Kirkpatrick, John Lewis, who is also here for stickers, and Kevin Williams. And speaking of those stickers, you should have been getting your Sea Lion stickers if you are in one of those patron groups. So let me know if you got them. Let me know if you love them. I know I do. And don't forget that you can join our patron community by going to patreon.com/Rossifari. I'd also like to say thank you to everyone who sent me news this week. I'm sorry that I ignored most of your news stories, but I've still got them all saved. And again, we'll get back to normal Zoo News eventually. So thank you to Anya Keene, Colleen Linehan, Kim Cooley Croninger, Carrie Kirkpatrick, Kevin Williams, Emily Rockbook, Dr. Laura Schenk, Matt Patford, Dr. Natalie Taco, Sam Evans, Jacob Zinn, Ann Yoshioka, Anna McEachran, Marissa Fonseca, Marianne Rossi, Daniel Cohen, Ali Malensky, Kay Malensky,
The Malenskys.
Bethany Frymark, Nikki Morley, Dr. Zoe Rossi, Jay Meredith, Rowena White, Kristen Khalil, Michael Sebastian, Nancy Fetters, and Lynn Vesley Gross. Thank you all so much for sending me all those nifty stories. Don't forget, we'll be back here on Tuesday with a brand new interview episode, and back on Friday for your next episode of Zoo News, which I'll be recording on a podcast adventure. So that is fun. And until those, remember, friends, the words Newsy credits backwards are Steiderk Yuswen. The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo. If I'm reading the executive order correctly, it's a bunch of word salad mixed with legal mumbo jabba.